Today we are in the office of Wooga, a Berlin company. Next to me is sitting Jan. Jan, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Jan Miczaika. I'm the COO at Wooga. That's the official title. If you look at Wooga, Jens, our founder and CEO, is responsible for deciding what games to make. Philip, our CTO, how to make them. And then once those two have made a great game, I try and make it as big as possible, which involves being responsible for things like marketing, PR, localization, community management, customer care, everything you need to make a good game really large.
What did you do before you started Wooga or worked at Wooga?
So I've been at Wooga for 3.5 years now, and before that I started my own company, Hitmeister, in Cologne. Mm-hmm. So I worked in e-commerce before coming to gaming.
Okay, understood. Let's briefly talk about the business model of Wooga. Can you briefly explain the major model drivers and how you think you try to improve on them?
Sure. So Wooga develops games for smartphones, so for iPhones, iPads, Android devices, and we originally started making social games for Facebook, so on the PC, but that has shifted quite strongly over the past years, and we believe this year about 70 to 80% of our revenue will be on mobile. So Wooga is a mobile games company. And the way we earn money is through in-app purchases. A bit of money also through advertising, but it's 90% in-app purchases. So what people can do is play our games for free, and the vast majority plays our games for free. But then you can buy, in the app, you can buy upgrades, boosts, these kinds of things to advance faster. And that's how we earn our money.
Why did you shift the platform just for a diversification purpose?
Well, Facebook at the time was still growing as it is now today. So Facebook has always been a very good platform for us to develop games. But the growth of mobile has been much, much faster in the past few years. And so what we saw is that it really makes sense for us to develop mobile first. And then if a game is successful on mobile, we will bring it to Facebook as well. So Jelly Splash is a good example, which is available on iPhone, Android, and Facebook.
Okay.
And yes, so what we did is we changed the order.
Understood. And in terms of revenue models that you use, can you tell us whether you're doing only advertising or maybe per app purchases?
Yes. So advertising is a small part of our revenue. The vast majority is in-app purchases. So what people typically do is they spend small amounts of money on in-app purchases like boosts and upgrades.
Okay, understood. Let's take a step back and to a more smaller Wooga, yeah? So because we are quite big right now. When you started off, how did you acquire the first customers? You said that you were using Facebook. But how did you acquire the critical mass so you can grow based on this network effects?
Yes, well, the first Wooga game, Brain Buddies, some people may remember it. Brain Buddies was a viral hit, so there was no money spent on advertising. It was a great game, and it, I think, satisfied one core human need, which is to figure out who's smarter, you or your friends, and that led to really rapid viral growth. And in the beginning, Wooga very consciously decided to not include any monetization features, but to simply grow the audience. Yeah. And that's, I think, what was also one of my learnings, but what was also quite smart is to say, okay, this is the growth phase, and then this is the monetization phase, and not limit your initial growth by immediately charging money for everything.
And how did you determine the switching point between growth and monetization?
That's a good question. I think there are games like Brain Buddies where monetization just doesn't work very well, because if we're trying to figure out which one of us is smarter and I introduce an element which allows me to pay more and it looks like I'm smarter than you, that would break the game. Yeah. And so the shift came with new games, so like Diamond Dash or Bubble Island or Monster World, where then paying for items was part of the kind of core game loop.
Okay. Let's switch to corporate strategy. What do you think in terms of the gaming industry? What are the major drivers for being competitive in this industry?
Well, the gaming market is very, very difficult because there's estimates. It's hard to get exact numbers, but let's assume there's around 1,000 new games launched every week. Obviously, the vast majority are not very good, but there are very good games coming out every week. At the same time, you have a small set of games. For example, most people know Candy Crush or Clash of Clans, which have been successful for quite a long time. And so on the one hand, you have a ton of new games coming out, and on the other hand, these very kind of long evergreen titles. And that makes gaming a very competitive market.
Okay, and then if you would like to split the portfolio of Wooga in terms of long usage games and let's say shorter period usage games, how would you make the percentage?
If you look at our current games, we'll have a certain set of casual arcade style titles. So for example, Diamond Dash, Bubble Island, Jelly Splash. These are games which people play for long periods of time, but often just a few minutes every day or once a week or something. And then we have games like Monster World or Pearl's Peril, which was one of our big hits last year, where we see much heavier usage because Pearl's Peril has weekly content, episodic storytelling, and if you get pulled into the story, you really want to know what happens. And so there we see higher usage patterns. And for this year, we will have a number of launches, some of which will be in the kind of genres we know very well, and some will be, for us, new genres.
Okay, and if I'm looking at this gaming portfolio, and you have this kind of low engagement games and then also high engagement games, my hypothesis would be that you acquire customers for these low engagement games in order to convert them to the high engagement games to earn money off them. Or is this maybe something else that you're trying to do, why you have this kind of portfolio of games?
The main reason we have a portfolio of games is, well, actually there's a number of reasons. One could be that you can once you have people in your network, you can cross-promote your games. But even the casual games can be run profitably, they monetize well. So it's not only for that. For me, the portfolio approach is also important because the gaming industry is young, but it's constantly changing. And if you focus too much on any genre or any kind of game, you could be hit because our games do take 1 to 1.5 years to develop.
Wow.
And let's say if we said let's only build gem swapping games because they're successful now, who knows how the market will be in 1.5 years.
Okay, so from the outside, the games look quite easy or simple, and you tell me that it takes 1 to 1.5 years to develop. Why did it take so long?
It's the games. I mean, it's one of the big things. They're easy to learn, hard to master.
Okay.
And if you look deeper, there's a lot of complexity which goes into making a game, and it starts with the product design, for example, the level designing, the difficulty, balancing, frustration, which can be fun if it's a challenge, but it can't be too frustrating. If not, you stop playing. So you have the whole product design complexity, obviously art, graphics, music, UI has to be done, and you have to make a game which is playable all over the world for a huge number of people. Which involves a lot of user testing and so on. So actually, I believe games are they're actually pretty complicated, even if they don't look that way sometimes from the outside.
Sure, because you internationalize them and then you have to adjust them to maybe regional types of players, for example.
Yes.
Okay, understood. Let's talk about the market development for the gaming industry. How did the game industry develop over the last years, let's say 5 years or so, and which segments grew and maybe which regions grew in terms of sales?
So you have a number of shifts going on. The first shift is the platforms. It used to be all about consoles and PC gaming, but that was heavily focused on a certain demographic, typically predominantly male, let's say 15 to 35, kind of that group. And that's what traditional gaming companies focused on, and they were also very good at making games for this target group. Then, especially as Facebook gaming came up, suddenly you had all new demographics, and you had more females, slightly older, and just not only this 15 to 20% of the population, but a lot more.
Okay.
And that was also the original idea for Wooga, is to focus on people who are currently underserved or were by gaming companies. So that was the first big shift.
Mm-hmm.
And then what people started noticing is in this new demographic, the gaming patterns are different. People play less and they play shorter sessions and so on. And then the idea was, why don't we bring that to cell phones or to smartphones, which people have in their pocket and can play in the subway, I don't know, in the supermarket cashier line. So that's the second shift, to take gaming out of the computer into a device people have in their pocket the whole time.
And what do you think would be the third shift that could appear?
I don't think it will be device-based. So I mean, obviously we are experimenting as everyone. You have the next generation are watches and glasses.
Yeah.
I'm not sure gaming on these devices will be the next big thing. I think on mobile there's still a number of genres which are not there yet, which will still which are open for kind of exploitation.
If your core capabilities are designing and distributing games, have you ever thought about, let's say, this virtual gaming, like this Oculus deal from Facebook, for example? Would this be something that you think is maybe the shifting phase?
I think that's a device. By the way, the device is really cool to wear and to try it out, but I think that's for the core gamers. Okay. Because our usage scenario is someone who has 2 to 5 minutes to play a bit. You know, he wants a bit of distraction, or she wants, just to, I don't know, get out of the stress of the everyday life. And wearing a headset, you can't do that for just a short gaming session while you're in the subway. Okay. And so I think that's a very cool device for gaming for kind of more traditional core companies.
Understood. So next we would like to share some insights with our audience from Entrepreneurial Insights, and we have 2 topics that we would like to talk with Jan. First one is how to create a good corporate culture, and the second one is how can you create and distribute games with a low budget. So first one, Jan, everybody knows that Wooga has a great corporate culture. For first-time entrepreneurs, what advice can you give them in how to create their own corporate culture?
I think corporate culture is extremely important for any founder or CEO, and it requires time and effort to be put into it. So it's not something you can delegate. So I don't believe you can say, well, this is employee number 10 and he'll start building the culture. I think it has to start with the first employees and at the very beginning. And it requires an investment of definitely time and attention. And maybe money as well, but definitely time and attention.
And what type of tools could they use to?
So I'd be very, I don't want to say opportunistic, but experimental in trying out things. Because what I believe, there's no such thing which kind of fits everyone. So just because, I don't know, Google gives a 20% time, I don't believe every startup should do that and copy that. And especially it doesn't mean if you copy everything Google does that you'll have the same corporate culture. To me, these corporate culture tools, it's like a toolbox you can pick from. And for example, just one example, we do mystery lunches. So everyone in the company once a month goes out to lunch with a group of 5 other people, so 6 in total. And we have a little software algorithm which mixes up people to make sure it's different teams, different roles, different countries, and so on. So it's not random, it's kind of almost random. And Wooga pays for the lunch, so it's like 10 euros per person budget. So it's not a huge financial investment, but for example there, the feedback we get is extremely good because it really fosters collaboration and contact within the company. And there are more tools like this. And so what I'd do is I'd look, listen, learn, read blogs and think about these tools and think which ones work for a company and which ones don't. try it out, tell people we'll be doing this twice, and then we will evaluate. And then also don't be afraid of stopping projects. If you say this doesn't fit us, then don't be afraid to stop it. So copy wisely, and then evaluate.
Okay. And the second thing would be, imagine a young programmer knocks on your door and says, "I've got 5,000 grand, $5,000 in my pocket, and I would like to spend 2 or 3 months building a small kind of game." What would you like to advise them?
I think it's you have indies who are very successful. Once in a while, you have the can't remember his name, but they're the hill climb racing guy from Finland and so on, or Tiny Wings or things like that. So once in a while you have an indie hit, but they're completely unpredictable, I believe. And an indie developer, especially with a small budget, really needs to have a unique combination, not only of gameplay, but also of timing, PR, buzz, everything around that. And that's very difficult to achieve. But there are always examples of successful indie developers. But if you're asking about the 5,000 euros or dollars, I'd invest them into product, because there's no way you can do a large marketing campaign with that kind of money. So I'd invest them into product, try and get bloggers, the industry, Apple interested, and launch it that way, or speak to a publishing partner. I mean, we do that with a very small number of games we really like, so we are open to publishing deals, and then there are other companies who do that as well.
Great. Thank you very much, Jan, and that's from Entrepreneurial Insights.